Alright, welcome to episode 95 of What If Civilization Started Over. In the previous episode we did some World War 3 stuff, and in this episode World War 3 is going to come to an end. So we saw the complete destruction of Carthage, and the entire country is really falling apart, with the Moroccan rebellion here in the west kind of being a major point of destruction, but also an Arabic invasion in the east. We've still got some nukes, like 11, but a few of them might be in this country. The Spanish are doing very well, the Franco Union is doing great, and the Germans are now gone. Ireland apparently still owns Greenland and Iceland, but they don't really, and the Russians are having a pretty amazing time. China has been bombed, and everyone's very, very unhappy in China, so we kind of need to look at that in today's episode, because some really crazy stuff's going to happen there. And, like, Pakistan's been occupied, so that's cool. Anyway, starting off with Iceland, Iceland, same thing. Let's just get that out of the way first, because a very small Franco invasion force will arrive in Iceland, and the Icelandic people are like, you know what, this is probably a pretty good thing. So they're not going to occupy that territory. Also just need to find this, because the rest of the territory, well, it's like a coup in Greenland, where the Greenlanders take over from any military people who actually are here. Which there's not really any, there's like one in one spot, maybe in the capital, and effectively after that, those people are killed, then the country becomes under Greenlander control again, so they rebel away, and everything's cool in Greenland, so that's nice. Anyway, back to Europe, I suppose. Well, there's still fighting going on lots of these fronts. The Spanish are having the time of their life. They're having an amazing time. This is brilliant for the Spanish. As you know, they don't have any nukes really left, but they have a lot of cities they can take from the French. So they're going to try and move up to some of these cities, fighting alongside their Italian friends. But the war has definitely dragged on a bit. It's probably like 1997, potentially later than that. Maybe, I don't know, somewhere around there. But the Italians are going to start to invade into the eastern parts of the Franco Union as well. However, over here in Germany, the Italians are going to do a lot worse since they have just less forces around here. And we see a major Franco offensive start to push west into these Italian territories. The Norwegians are also going to help to join into this, pushing south from their land. They really want to secure the German capital for some reason, even though it's being completely destroyed by nuclear bombs. But, oh well, they'll be fine. The Russians are kind of struggling to fight against the Norwegians down here, because they've got two fronts to uphold against the Norwegians. So what they're going to do is just withdraw a load of forces from this front, because nobody cares about fighting up in Lapland. So they take a load of people out from there. It doesn't really matter. The Russians aren't too worried. And instead they're going to just send a lot of these guys into these occupied Norwegian lands, which puts them on the border of the Franco Union, who's doing a pretty good job at fighting this war. A lot of Dutch people are helping as well. Anyway, the Arabic Union is going to continue to invade up into Italy, because now they don't really have as many people to worry about. Pakistan's gone. They do have to worry about the rest of the Chinese alliance. It's kind of helping them out while fighting on that front. The Italians will defend their Istrian country area, but the Arabic Union is going to capture both of these nuked major cities, which is going to cause another major collapse on the Italian front line, as the Franco Union will manage to push back a lot of their invasion forces into this country. And then up here in Germany, they're also going to have some more successes, but they're in push into core Italian territory, so that's nice. I mean, they used to be allies not too long ago. Anyway, over here to Russia. Russia has pushed pretty far into Arabic territory, and that's kind of crazy. So this offers Russia a few benefits, and one of these major benefits is the ability to drop nukes on more core Arabic stuff. Over the war, they've been able to develop more ability to strike things far away, and that's really been helpful for the Russians. So they're going to strike more Arabic cities, but far away ones. So they'd strike all the way into Anatolia and some of these other major cities in much more core Arabic territory. They hit this one, I'm not counting, but I think that's like 4. They hit this one in Greece, which is 5 probably. I haven't really counted the nukes very well across the entire thing. I'm pretty sure Russia's meant to have less nukes than they do, but oh well. And yeah, lots of this stuff all around the kind of close to main areas of the Arabic Union is hit. So the Russians go from 81 down to 70 something. 72 nuclear bombs, and then 24 outside their territory, which I'm pretty sure should be right. I just really haven't been checking. The Arabic Union, of course, has also got a pretty large invasion into Russian lands over in Central Asia, where they've been very successful. So with that, they're going to try and launch some of their own nuclear bombs, especially towards the Russian capital. 1, 2, 3. That's pretty impressive. 3 there, 4 from there. They're just going to hit 8 nuclear bombs hit Russian soil, which is going to, well, actually, they probably want to be even with the Russians. That's alright. go for a 9th and a 10th over here. So they're going to go down to... and they're not even, that's the thing. I did it wrong there. Give me a sec, guys. Alright, so yeah, they're going to go down to 82 and 30, or 72 and 36 outside of their territory, which is not that many. They got 36 in their country, whilst the Russians have like 46, no, 48, 48, I think that's right. Anyway, the Southern Indians have done absolutely nothing, so good job to them. Anyway, back over to more actual fighting stuff. Over here in Central Asia, the Arabic Union is having continued prolonged success against the Russians as they continue to move eastwards around the Aral Sea and into more of this central core territory, taking more nuked from major cities. The Russians are going to try to do counteroffensive stuff, but generally fail, as their ally here in the blue team, down in the south, or mid-country, starts to lose even more to the Kashmir country north of it. The Arabic Union, however, is going to suffer major losses in the Pakistani-Iranian area, as the Green Gangetic country and also like Tibet and Chinese troops and Kashmiri ones do a pretty good job of pushing them back in these areas, with even an offensive into the southern areas of the Salmon country, which has been heavily nuked, proving to be pretty successful, so that's nice. This country still has a lot of nukes, the Gangetic one, of course. Over here in Carthage, the Moroccans are going to do some sort of stuff, but like they're not doing a whole lot really. They're just kind of moving into the desert. They don't really care that much anymore, and they're not going to push towards these cities, really, because it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to get them. The Carthaginians are effectively out of this war. They're not doing any more attacks. So Morocco is going to choose a different target, and that target is obviously going to be the Spanish. They're going to start doing bombing runs, not with nukes, but nonetheless, they're still going to bomb stuff. And what they also do is incite some rebellions, which could have been incited already by just generally the Spanish doing stuff in the old pink Spanish country. So they're back as this area starts to rebel away into this core Spanish land, well, just like general Spanish land. They start to move into occupied zones over here in the east, and everything's kind of falling apart for the blue Spanish now, as we see forces of the Moroccan country move up to this land, which they already previously claimed as their own. And from here, what they're going to do is push north into this territory. Most Spanish forces were fighting in the south of France. They really weren't expecting this invasion. And actually, it turns out most of the forces occupying this land were pink Spanish ones, so they really start to fall back to their main lands, whilst this pink Spanish move along this southern coastal area, taking more major cities around here. They're pushed out of some areas over here in the east, or west I mean, but yeah, they're not doing a whole amazingly job. What the hell is that sentence? The Franco Union is going to direct some more forces to help fight in the south of this area, pushing towards Aquitaine and retaking the city of Bordeaux, or would be that. And they're also pushing against the Italian front, which has been collapsing for the Italians, as they suffer quite a lot against the Arabic Union, so it looks pretty good for those guys in Europe. However, we need to head over to China, because what's going on in China? Well, China's extremely suffering at this point. They are going to withdraw a load of troops from the Mongolian country, which is a pretty good idea, because Mongolia isn't as important as keeping your country in existence. So a lot of forces are going to withdraw, and in fact, all of them withdraw how they hold a defensive on the Mongolian front lines, while the Tibetan troops start to move up into the southern territory to reoccupy it. But with the general Russian offensive hitting into the east and the north, the Tibetans are losing ground up there. Gaining ground though, we have the Russians as they start to do a major offensive into northern China, moving towards the capital city and some of these just generally poorer areas of the Chinese country. The Koreans are also doing a very impressive job, and so the Indo-Chinese in the south. So China feels that they kind of have to unleash a load of nuclear bombs, and this is going to be quite an unpopular thing to do, but it's what they're going to do regardless. China still has 84 nuclear bombs in their arsenal, so there's no reason not to go and nuke everybody. You've got loads. Go do that. So they're going to drop nukes all over the cities of Korea. I think that's 4, the 5th one, and the 6th one. Korea is not having a great time here. There's 6 nukes, and then Indochina hasn't really been nuked too much yet. So let's go nuke them a bit. The Chinese are kind of, it's like far away for them. I think that was 10, maybe 11. Let's say it was 11. Sure. 11 nuclear bombs, so 84, 24. So we're going to go down to 73 and 24 outside of their territory. But this is an incredibly unpopular move, and people start to really hate the government. They hate the government so much, in fact, that people are going to storm the presidential building and like kill the president and the other ministers, and they get this populist guy who everyone kind of likes. Maybe they're a celebrity or something, or they're just maybe pacifist. I'm not really sure. I only just made them up, like yesterday. Anyway, I knew they would exist. Never mind. Anyway, they put this guy in as president, and he's going to have some pretty interesting ideological ideas because he believes in the ideology of separatism, which is a strange sort of ideology to believe in. I don't know why your thing is over here. It should be up here. Separatism, that's a weird ideology. Well, what we see happen is the country just kind of stops doing stuff, which is a bad idea, as Korean forces continue to move in through the north, taking the capital city as they flee from this land. And the Koreans really just occupy a lot of the north. But finally, they're going to pull everything together, and they pull everything together to such a degree that separatism takes hold, and the country, as the president described, will just decide to divide itself up. Now, like the parameters for the new countries they're going to create from their old country is very, very unknown. But basically, the entire nation just wants to withdraw from the war, and the same thing can be said about the Philippines, who will declare its independence away and not join Indochina, but it declares its independence away from the rest of these countries. And the nukes are all moved into this really weird, horribly fighting Chinese territory, and they withdraw from the war. So that was extremely unexpected and really, really bad for a number of Chinese allies, as they now have their three allies in Tibet, Kashmir, and the Gangetic country, whose they kind of send stuff saying maybe we should go to peace, but that's not accepted. Not accepted at all. Also, a lot of strange Chinese troops in these countries who didn't return home, and the leaders of these countries are forcing these guys to continue to fight because they really want to win. They don't want to get destroyed. Anyway, heading over here to Southeast Asia, the declaration of leaving the war from China has drastically shaken up this region, as the Borneo country manages to retake some of its inner cities, as Sulawesi has a lot of people fighting this country withdraw. Borneo is a wreck though, so oh well. The Western Australians are going to continue to move up into this land as they start to make offensives and landings all over these islands, whilst the Papua New Guinea country, with aid from Korea and Indochina, is also going to be able to make landings in this territory. The Filipino island chain is completely tearing itself apart, as loads of other separatist groups are rising up there, and like unionists and democratic people and autocratic people, and it's just a whole load of fighting. So that's pretty fun. I think the Philippines got nuked though, so yeah. And being nuked and the constant threat of having your country obliterated by nuclear bombs has caused widespread hysteria throughout China and lots of the countries of the world, as even nations like the Arabic Union and Russia are very afraid of what could be happening here. Anyway, let's go back over to Spain, because Spain's kind of interesting. Spain's having a horrible time. The Spanish, or the Big Spanish, have taken over. Okay, what was that about? Taken over everything in the south, and they've also started to move in on some of these other islands over here in the west. And that's going to cause something kind of interesting if we head down here to the south, because we see another country, much like the ones in Venezuela, they just invade this whole island territory down here in southern Spain, and don't really declare war. They just invade it, and the Spanish don't do anything about it because they barely have any navy stuff there. So that kind of sucks. Anyway, the Spanish will continue to lose land to the Moroccans and the rebellion in Spain. Everyone is not having a great time in Spain, and also you can see there's a lot of nuked cities, so everyone's very radioactive as well. The monarchy was very popular, and then other things go badly, and everyone's radiated and dying, and it's really horrible. So it's kind of not going amazingly. But the Spanish are once again going to be invaded by the Franco Union as they start to move into this northern territory. We see Catalonian people start to rise up over here in the west, which is strange because they're such a pacifist country, but they're going to do it regardless. They're going to give it their best shot. So they start to move in and declare their independence away from the Spanish government. The Italians are going to try to occupy a lot of this southern. Okay, what the hell's going on there? Southern stuff, which they actually succeeded. The Franco Union does not retake it, and the Moroccan forces down in the south continue to do well, as the popularity of the Moroccan movement and independence group is just extremely high. The Spanish at this point are completely isolated from everyone else. There's been a naval blockade put upon their country, and it really, really sucks. The Italians at this point are basically alone in the world apart from the Russians, but the Russians aren't doing amazingly. Arabic forces are going to push them out of eastern Romania as they now get onto the border of these lands, and now Russian forces over here in Ukraine and the Caucasian region are also being pushed back by Arabic forces. This is in part due to the fact the Russians are trying to do a counteroffensive here in the Central Asian, like Astrakhan region, which is going kind of successfully. The Russians retake a few radioactive major cities, but oh well, here's what it is. And they link up with some of these other territories around here The Mint country has also gone ahead and just lost its capital city, so that was a good idea from you guys. But they retreat further back into their central territory, and everything's fine. But it is a horrible front line over here. The Southern country is also managing to work together better with the Kashmir country, with all the hate and just the complete violence and anarchy in this nation. The blue team's not entirely fighting against people there because they kind of see benefit in just letting them do their thing. The Tibetans are starting to move back into the Mongolian region as the Russians withdraw their forces from here, and some Chinese nationalist people start to move in to help the Tibetans. The Russians also aren't invading here. Probably the biggest contributor to Russia feeling bad is the nuclear barrage that's just hit their country over here in the east. So that would really suck. And where is this nuclear barrage coming from? I bet you can guess. I'm pretty sure you can. Anyway, Russian major cities that haven't been nuked yet are going to get nuked. So there's 1, 2, the third one over there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 more major cities that hit. So there's quite a few nuclear bombs, and of course the nation of Korea just dropped them. Those are pretty far-ranging ones, but oh well. The Russians weren't really expecting this at all, and the Koreans are going to continue to reinvade into Russian lands that they just occupied in China. And yeah, basically no Russian troops were here. China kind of settled down on those its arms, except for a few nationalist people. And now with Korean and Indo-Chinese troops moving up into this land, the Russians were totally unprepared. They're also going to continue to lose territory over here in the east. There would be Far Eastern Pink Country rebellions, except for the fact that they're not really doing that whole lot. The Tibetans are going to actually start their own invasion into Russian territory now, which is kind of crazy. Although something to note that I completely forgot to mention, but is quite important to mention, is the Tibetans did occupy a load of Western China. So just pretend that happened before. It was something I meant to do and then forgot to do. But there you go. That's what that looks like. And they're going to continue to move up into this other Chinese land. So the Mongolian country is a radioactive wasteland, and they're not doing a whole load of great stuff in the war at the moment. And Russian forces are being forced to withdraw from this territory. Technically, the Tibetans and the Koreans are at war, but the Tibetans are like, well, technically China's not fighting the war anymore, so maybe we're not part of their alliance. They kind of left the alliance because China doesn't exist anymore. So let's pretend we're not at war and let's just destroy Russia instead. They're very grateful for the Korean aid and fighting Russia because they see Russia as their biggest threat. People who don't see Russia as their biggest threat are people like the Ganjiastic country, as they continue to do excellent work in pushing back the Arabic Union. And you may be wondering, how is the Arabic Union being pushed back this badly? Well, things in the Arabic Union aren't going as well as it might seem, and it's kind of moving into this country as well, as a major rebellion starts to pop up in the southwestern parts of this nation, along this general area, like kind of Malawi, Mozambique, and whatever else, Zimbabwe maybe. And the Tanzanian country is starting to fall apart, and so are other allies in this country, as you see the Hijaz nation start their own invasion into the blue country right here, and the Mesopotamians and the Arabic Union will try to save them, but it's not going great. They currently direct their forces, and internally this nation is kind of falling apart and burning. But hey, at the moment it's alright. Anyway, back over to America, which we visited like once, and we see the Texans reconnect with this league over here, and they're also going to manage to recapture their own capital city. However, the Americans are still having a lot more success than the Canadians are. The Texans, definitely not Canadians. As they push over into these central territories, and with the threat that's being cut off over here in the north, the Americans are able to capture a lot of this northern territory. From here, they start to invade into northeastern Texan lands, taking some radioactive major cities, and yeah, things are going pretty well for them. Over in Australia, the Red Country is basically just lost at this point. Indo-Chinese forces have been diverted to Borneo, and now all the offensives in this country are gone. They start to invade into the northern part of Sulawesi, and the Red Country is going to just surrender. They actually just leave the war, which is nice of them. Which means Java and Borneo are at war, but both these countries don't want to fight each other. However, the Northern Australians and the Western Australia and New South Wales do want to fight each other. Well, they didn't really, but the Western Australians did it anyway. So they've started their invasion into New South Wales, so just to cause some more hostilities in this region. But there's only 3 nuclear bombs between them, so they should kind of be fine. Anyway, Korean landings are going to be made in the Russian Far East, especially the Kamchatka Peninsula. Oh, this video is already 19 minutes long, which is insane. So that happens, And at this point, both superpowers in Russia and the Arabic Union are really starting to fall apart. The Korean forces go around the Russian front line. That's because they've already occupied as part of the Russian front line. So most of the Chinese north is under Korean occupation. Just 73 nuclear bombs hiding out here somewhere. That's the Koreans and the Tibetans steal out of them, which they might. The Mongolians are still surviving, and over here in Germany, the Russians are having to withdraw a lot of their offensive troops. Norwegian troops start to make landings all across the northern Russian occupation zones in Germany, as they get into Danzig and Poland. They're also starting a counteroffensive over here into the Russian Lapland territory, and it might seem really sudden what's happening, but it's something that the Russians should have realized was going to happen a while ago. Finnish revolutions and independence movements start to pop up in Russian lands, and the Russians are going to have to divert some forces to try and stop them, but they're just not really capable. They try to do some of it, and they do pretty well in the north, but unfortunately the Norwegians and the Russians are doing an incredible job at pushing back the Russians. They take over these islands from the Russians, and in the south we see the Italians completely pushed back over here by the Arabic Union, who's going to continue to move into German territory. And the Germans are just having a terrible time in this war. The Arabic Union is going to manage to push up into some Italian lands, but they are also not doing great, as the Italians over here in the peninsula will actually manage to push back the Arabic Union to kind of their last hold, and the Italian Navy is doing a pretty good job at pushing back the Arabic Union from some of their islands, which is really impressive because the Arabic Union was at the start of the war the country had regarded the best navy in the entire world. And the Spanish will finally lose their capital city to Franco forces as they move in and capture it. And at this point, the country will surrender, so that sucks for you. The Franco Union is going to turn its attention to the Italian occupations in the south of their territory, as the Italians turn their mind to the occupations in Venice. So everything is a huge mess, and the Arabic Union is doing a great job of just not really doing anything. The Franco Union is going to continue to push into France, and the Arabic Union tries to link up by pushing through Romania, capturing the capital of this area. The Russians, however, are having a huge success over here in Ukraine and the Caucasian front, as they manage to completely push back any Arabic advances in this territory. And also over here in Caucasia, Central Asia, oh my god, I keep getting it wrong. They start to push into Astrakhan, and incredibly the Russians make a linkage up with the Caspian Sea, which doesn't really achieve anything, but it shows the inherent weakness of the Arabic Union as they really start to lose some land. The Arabic Union is going to defer their occupations in Central Asia over to their ally in the Salmon country, which isn't actually really a country anymore, but they start to move into some of this territory, until finally what we see occur is Central Asians basically just redeclare their independence, so they start to pop up back in the capital city. And then over here in Russia, in this occupation zone right here, the Arabic Union is kind of forced to withdraw, as all the troops had to pull back, and the Aral Republic shows its face again, moving into the southern territory. And the Russians, they don't like that, because they really don't like the Aral country. But they try to move into the north and don't do a whole load of stuff well. Anyway, back over in the blue country, they are not doing amazingly, but blue country, the main country, they're not doing amazingly, but they're surviving. And then apparently, I thought I was going to make you invade into Russia, but maybe I got distracted instead. But yeah, they start their invasion into Russia, capturing a few major cities in the southern part of the Xinjiang country. The Mongolians are still not doing amazingly, as they lose more and more cities, and they're very close to losing the capital city. Korean troops over here in these South Russian territories start to completely blitz westwards into Russia, as now we see major Central Asian and Russian people start to rise up against the Russian government in the Capitol building and these core western cities. There's huge demonstrations and riots, but luckily everyone's conscripted, and the world isn't really sexist at this point, so it's not just maybe being conscripted, it's basically anyone. And to be honest, the age cap might be 13. I don't think anyone's being born in any of these countries. Just everyone is fighting, and it's really horrible and brutal stuff. The Arabic Union is going to suffer some demonstrations and riots and independence things over in the Central African regions, which is, the Sahara Desert. But nonetheless, we do see groups start to pop up in this territory. Some wonder if the Carthaginians are funding them, but they're probably not, because I don't think they can fund themselves. Anyway, with the Tanzanian country in the middle of a civil war, which they're apparently not doing very well to fight against, as they move into more Tanzanian territory, the red country up here in the north is going to invade, with claims on the ethnic territory in this region, which the Tanzanians were not expecting, and they are really able to defend. So they declare war on these square or the circle lines. You think it's a square, but it's not. The Hijaz country is going to move in and take the capital of this blue country. And interestingly enough, we see the Central African Rebellion also push into this land, with it being part of the brown country a while ago. So they also reinvaded this territory before the small African Hijaz country is going to divide it up with them. And now they send their forces in against the Tanzanian country, with the red and the Hijaz countries kind of working together, maybe a little bit. The Southern Indians try to send some forces over to Tanzania, but also they're just destined to not do anything, because they don't care. I mean, they could have really helped bomb the Gangiati country, but they didn't do anything like that. So they might have signed a secret treaty. Anyway, the Arabic Union is going to be pushed entirely now out of this country, and we see these guys start to liberate areas of southeastern Central Asian country. The Salmon country hates the Central Asians, so they're going to help to move in and occupy more lands from the Arabic Union, and then also move into this territory. But the Arab country is going to kind of help the Central Asians and push them back. The Russians start to lose more lands over here in Central Asia, including that weird-looking peninsula thing. Over here in this country, they basically free up the entire northern part of it, and the Russians really aren't occupying anything at this point, except for maybe some land in Caucasia. Over here in Romania, then, the Russians are going to withdraw all their troops in this area, as they see it likely that the Arabic Union and the Franco Union are going to meet up over here, which they indeed do, as the Russians lose control over all of their German occupation zones, and the Italians withdraw. The Italians withdraw over the Franco Union. I mean, that's a bizarre thing to do, but there was a secret treaty signed between both these countries, a bit like one that might have been signed in Central Asia, and it's going to definitely change some more stuff, as following this, the Italians turn their attention over to not only helping fight the Arabic Union, but also they send some forces to go fight the Russians. And this is a major betrayal. They're like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you fighting me? I thought we were allies. And unfortunately, it seems the Italians have maybe had a change of heart, as they start to push in against Russian forces. And now at this point, Russia is almost alone in the world, as the Norwegian and Finnish rebels deal with the northern areas of Finland, and the Russian people are kind of tearing their country apart. Luckily, however, the Arabic Unions got a terrible defensive in the Caucasian region, as they push over to the Caucasus Mountains, and that's pretty cool. However, both these countries are going to suffer a nuclear exchange from each other, of course. Both of them have quite a few nuclear bombs left over still, and it means they're just going to start dropping them on each other, of course. So, Russians are pretty close, and they're going to drop one naturally on the Arabic Union's capital city, so that's a major offensive thing. That one didn't even hit a city, but don't worry. They're going to drop some more on the Caspian holdings, which is kind of mean. I don't want to count. And then also commentary stuff, and then I try and do both, and it works badly. But I think that was 10 for the Russians. There's 11 and there's 12. These are pretty long range ones. And the Arabic Union is of course going to have their own returns, I think, but the Russians are now on 60 and 24, whilst the Arabic Union is going to return fire by launching some of their own nukes into Russian territory, especially the Russian capital area, as they launch one into the Russian capital over there, and a lot of these outer suburb cities hitting 4, 5, and 6, okay, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So Russia's been nuked a lot there, both of them just went back down to 60, but the Arabic Union has 36 outside of their territory. That was a wrong there again. Anyway, the Arabic Union is also now down to 58 and 34, as the Norwegians drop a crazy 2 nuclear bombs onto the Russian Baltic territories, which is for a pretty important reason. So that kind of officially gets rid of a load of... Okay, that was wrong there again, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Good job, me. But that gets rid of a load of the Russian defense in this territory, and allows the Norwegians to bypass the defenses in the St. Petersburg region and make their own landing here on the Russian Baltic coastal area, as the Russians really start to fall apart. But not only are the Russians falling apart, but a certain other very important empire is, and that nation is the Arabic Union. Over here in the Romanian area, people start to break away and declare their independence. However, the important thing to note in this territory is that the Russians are just going to come back in and invade. But that wasn't the important thing I meant to note, but you know what I mean. And the Russians push back into this territory, which is kind of fast and mean, but they managed to wipe out a lot of the Romanian rebels in this area, as they're not really doing a whole lot. But luckily for the Arabic Union and the countries in that alliance, the Romanians were declaring their independence, but also declaring themselves in a new alliance, as the Arabic Union is able to give up their occupations in this zone, as the Romanians declare themselves now part of the Circle Alliance, and the new republic breaks away from Russian control and starts its own invasion into the Russian-Ukrainian region. But other bad things are happening, as the Franco Union is not going to stop the Italians from pushing back against Arabic forces, and the Arabic forces aren't going to stop themselves being pushed back, as the Italians start to move in to the Albanian, Montenegrin regions, and down here through the Greek territory, which is very, very close to the Arabic center. They even moved to Thessaloniki, which they kind of really want to take, but I don't think they will be allowed to in a potential peace deal. We see more major rebellions pop up, especially in the Balkan region, with the Bulgarians popping up. Unfortunately, the Romanians don't bother to stop this, which may be a bad idea for them. But the Bulgarians push over into Thrace with just people popping up and rebelling in that region. However, the Arabic Union has to divert some forces around there. At this point, all their holdings in Central Asia are kind of falling apart as the Central Asians take over this territory, and then more rebellions are going to pop up. We see a Persian one and an Orange Team one, with the Orange Team one basically just being some Central Asian forces. And the Persians, that's kind of interesting to see them return. But that is by far not the most surprising rebellion that pops up, because it's one that really nobody thought they would ever show their face ever again, because it is the very ancient Hejaz country that shows its face and rebels away, as people of the Hejaz faith declare their independence away from the Arabic Union. This colour is just going to represent all the African occupation zones, which, although they enjoyed prosperity under the Arabic Union, now declare their independence away from them. Over here in Horn of Africa, I don't really know what colour we'd have for that, so I'm just going to make it blue. There we go, here's a cool blue. These areas will also declare their independence away from the Arabic Union, and this country is very quickly losing control of their entire nation. Over here in the North African centre, we see whatever they're called, the Libyans declare independence away, as they take over all this northern territory. Actually, maybe not all of that, because I think it's quite likely, really, that the Italians would invade into Tunisia, so they occupy this northern territory. But the Libyans are going to start to invade into Arabic lands over here in the east, so it's technically their own lands, but they push towards the Egyptian front, which is where a lot of Arabic troops are holding out. Down in the south, we even see Omani groups try to rebel away, as the Ganjati country makes a landing over here in this region, which is pretty impressive. Nobody's really nuking anybody anymore, which is nice. Nobody really wants to use any more nukes, so this invasion is going pretty well. And there's huge plots of rebellions, and especially in the Suez Sinai area, which breaks apart the Egyptian front. The Arabic Union is going to continue to lose in these areas, with eventually the African main rebellion taking part out of the stuff. Anyway, over to the Russians then. How are they faring? The answer is not well. The Russians continue to lose land over here in the east, with eventually their capital taking being by a joint Franco-Norwegian, Romanian, Italian, or battalion, Arabic kind of group. And the Russians will surrender, leaving the war, which is pretty impressive for them. The front lines will stabilize eventually something like this, and surprisingly the mid-country, as the Mongolians and the mid-country both leave the war, they managed to survive. Officially and effectively, all the land east of this point is under the control of the Koreans, which is rather a lot, I would say. And then down here in the south, we see the New South Wales country has managed to solidify its front line by pushing back against the Western Australians, and it's likely they would have reinvaded if the war had continued longer, but at this point, the war is basically over. The Russians have quit the war, and their invasion into the Arabic Union is still, they're still occupying this land, which is strange, and they really should be doing that. But the Arabic Union is suffering invasion from almost everybody, and their old allies in Norway and the Franco Union aren't going to help them, which is really rude. But these rebellions start to really tear apart the Arabic Union, and even forces of the old this isn't Mesopotamian country, and where's the culturally? You're culturally different, aren't you? The lands of the old Arabic Union and these ethnicities that are part of this old country start to declare independence away as major revolts tear apart this country, and they just kind of hope that maybe things will go better for them following this, because at this point the war is basically over. There is no hope for really anybody to win, as this war effectively has had nobody win, because it just went so horribly. Just so much death, 100 million people have died, at least, I would say. Arabic Union loses control of its last, not really core territories. I think the Turkish areas were broken away before. But at this point, we see a Bulgarian invasion into the north, and the Italians move into the south, along with the Franco people, who potentially might actually be helping to invade the Arabic Union. And here, at the very end of the war, are the front lines. The end of World War III. As the Arabic Union leaves the war, Russia technically wins. China's not fully invaded, but they divide themselves up, and everyone else is also going to divide them up. And following this, we're going to see the peace treaty, which really officially ends World War III. So thank you for watching. I had a lot of fun doing this war. I've never done a war like it, and the peace treaty should be an awful lot of fun to record. So I'll see you then. Goodbye, and have a nice rest of your day.